All right, so today we're really diving deep into the world of international relations, um, and we're looking at RoleCatcher,
Okay.
which seems like a really interesting platform for anyone who wants to work on the global stage. What do you think?
Yeah, it's really interesting how RoleCatcher really gets into like the fine details of what an international relations officer does,
Yeah.
you know, because it's one thing to say, oh, yeah, they work with different countries, but what does that actually look like day to day? And I think that's what's really interesting about these excerpts.
Yeah, let's unpack that a little bit because it is one thing to say, oh, they work with countries. It's another thing to be an international relations officer and work with multiple countries at the same time, often with different agendas.
Right.
So, what does that actually look like?
Right. It's like imagine trying to coordinate a project, but instead of different teams in your office, you have all these different countries, each with their own culture, political climate, and their own just way of doing things.
Yeah.
That's where an international relations officer comes in, trying to build those bridges, make sure everyone is at least understanding each other.
It's a tough job. It's like being the world's most diplomatic juggler,
Yeah,
except instead of bowling pins, you're juggling, international agreements and cultural sensitivities and all of that. So what kind of skills do you need to pull that off?
well, RoleCatcher really emphasizes active listening, critical thinking, judgment.
Hmm.
These are not things you can just learn from a book.
Hmm.
You need real emotional intelligence.
Yeah, it's one thing to pass, diplomacy 101. It's another thing to be in like a high stakes negotiation where one miscommunication could have like international consequences.
Exactly. And that's why understanding cultural nuances is so important. Like a gesture that might be polite in one culture could be super offensive in another.
Oh, absolutely.
So an effective international relations officer really needs to be able to think on their feet and navigate all that.
It's like being a cultural chameleon almost. You have to adapt and build trust with all these different people from all these different backgrounds. Um, what other things does Rollcatcher highlight?
Well, they talk a lot about communication because it's not enough to just understand complex issues.
Yeah.
You need to be able to explain your organization's position very clearly and convincingly, and do that both in writing and verbally.
Right. And not just to your own team. You have to be able to communicate that to people all over the world with totally different backgrounds.
Yeah, this isn't sending a mass email.
Hmm.
You need to know how to craft a message that's going to resonate with a very specific audience and achieve your diplomatic goals.
So it sounds like we're talking about a career path that requires this really unique blend of, diplomacy, cultural intelligence, and strategic communication skills.
Right. It's a lot.
No pressure, right?
Yeah.
But really, it sounds like Rollcatcher gets it. They understand what it takes to be successful in this field.
Yeah, it really is a
Yeah.
lot. But, for the right kind of person, the impact you can have is huge.
Right. And it's not just about, negotiating a trade deal here or there. We're talking about like tackling these global challenges like climate change, global health crises, conflict resolution. I mean, the stakes are really high.
Right. And those kinds of challenges require you to have like a really deep understanding of all the things that kind of go into international relations,
Hmm.
like the history, the political landscape,
Yeah.
all the economic ties. I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah, you almost need like a mental map of the world
Hmm.
and not just like where the countries are, but like how they relate to each other, what their priorities are, what their history is with each other, like all of that.
Exactly. And that's where, really understanding diplomacy and international relations theory is so important because it gives you that framework to analyze all these different situations,
Yeah.
Understand the different perspectives and maybe even like anticipate potential obstacles before they come up.
So it's not enough to just know that two countries are having a disagreement. You need to know why. Like, what's the history there? What are the economic factors at play? Are there cultural differences that are feeding into this? And then on top of that,
Right. And that's just the starting point. Then you've got to figure out how to bridge those differences and like help them find some kind of common ground.
right, which brings us right back to those skills that we were talking about. Active listening, cultural sensitivity, strategic communication. I mean, those become even more important when you're talking about, these complex negotiations or trying to mediate a conflict.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And RoleCatcher even mentions that, they talk about the importance of building mutually beneficial relationships. And that's really, I think, at the heart of what it means to do this kind of work well.
Because you're not trying to win.
Right.
You're trying to find a solution that actually works for everybody.
Exactly. A good international relations officer understands that building trust and getting people to work together is essential if you want to find lasting solutions.
And that is not easy. Especially in a world where, political tensions are high, and, one little misunderstanding can really escalate a situation.
Yeah.
So it takes a really special kind of person to not just survive, but really thrive in that kind of environment.
It does, and that's why I think it's so interesting that RoleCatcher talks about this idea of continuous learning,
Hmm.
because this is not a field where you can just like learn it once and then you're done.
Right.
Things are constantly changing.
Mm.
What worked yesterday might not work tomorrow.
You got to be really adaptable.
Yeah.
Always learning, always growing, always trying to learn more about the world and how to do this work better.
Right, because the stakes are so high, you can't ever really get complacent.
Right.
You're always learning, you're always growing, you're always trying to be more effective for your organization and for, I think, just the values of diplomacy and cooperation.
It really is true, right? The only constant is change.
Absolutely, especially in this field.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where a platform like RoleCatcher can be so valuable, because it's not just like, oh, here's a list of jobs. It's like they give you all these other resources to help you build a career in this field.
It's like having a mentor in your pocket.
Yeah.
Who can give you advice and support and just kind of help you keep up with everything that's going on.
Yeah. And they have some really cool things like those AI tools that can help you write your application or even practice for an interview.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's really useful because, you can have all the passion in the world and all these skills, but you have to be able to actually articulate all that to a potential employer.
Exactly.
Mhm.
It's one thing to tell yourself, oh, yeah, I'm a great communicator. It's another thing to actually have to do it in front of, all panel of diplomats.
Right. Talk about a high pressure situation.
Yeah.
But it's inspiring, though, when you think about it, the impact that people in these roles can have.
Yeah.
This isn't just about climbing the corporate ladder.
Right.
This is about doing something really important with your career, really making the world a better place.
It's about promoting understanding and cooperation and trying to find peaceful solutions to these really complex global challenges.
It really is about building a better future.
It is.
And that's something worth dedicating your life to.
Absolutely. It's a career that I think asks a lot of you,
Hmm.
but it also offers incredible rewards, especially for those people who are really passionate about making a difference on that global stage.
So it kind of makes you wonder, what role could you play in all of this?
Yeah.
What skills do you have? What perspectives could you bring to this really dynamic and challenging field?
That's a question we all have to ask ourselves.
Mm.
And maybe some of those answers are in those resources that RoleCatcher provides.
That's a great thought to leave everyone with. So if you're interested in international relations and you want to make a real difference, exploring a resource like RoleCatcher could be a really great first step. So thank you for joining us today on this deep dive into the world of international relations.